Okay, so we're getting into some Math 143 stuff. I'm not going to take as much time on these videos because by the time they get here, they're usually a little more comfortable with math. They've had all the basics explained to them, so you can kind of hustle through this stuff. But it is good to have some tricks up your sleeve. So a typical 143 problem would be to find the vertex of this function, of this parabola. And there's really 3, maybe 4, technically 5 ways you can do this. The first way is through the use of the vertex formula. This is minus b over 2a, and then run that through your function. So looking at this, you would say, okay, my b value is 8, so I want negative 8 over 2 times negative 4. Well, that's also negative 8. And that simplifies to be 1. And then I would take this and I would run it through my function. So to find the y-coordinate, it would be minus 4 times 1 squared plus 8 times 1 minus 2. And that ends up simplifying to be negative 4 plus 8. That's 4 minus 2 is 2. So you could say that the vertex then is at the coordinate x is 1 when y is 2. That's one way to approach it. Another technique that you can use is instead of using the vertex formula, you can complete the square. And under the right conditions, that's my preferred method. If those are even, that makes it easy, but let's just go ahead and go through the whole process. So completing the square, first it only works if my leading coefficient is a 1 on my x squared. If not, I have to factor it out. So factoring it out, I would pull out the negative 4. On the inside, when I pull out the negative 4, that's just dividing by negative 4. Leave some space so you have room to complete the square and move your constant to the other side there. And what I want to do is take half of 2, which is 1, and square it, which is also 1, and I'm going to add 1 on this side. But I've just unbalanced my equation. This side is now 1 unit heavier than this side is. Normally you would subtract 1 over here, except for keep in mind we want to keep the function by itself. So let's add 1 on both sides. Sorry, I'm doing this backwards. This should be add 1 right there. That should be subtract 1. That happens. You'll make mistakes like that. Just be good about catching them. So I would normally add 1 to both sides, but since I want to keep f of x alone, you would subtract 1 from both sides. But I really did not add 1. It looks like I added 1, but keep in mind I factored out this negative 4 when I completed the square. So if I were to distribute it back in across all terms including this one, I really subtracted 4 from one side. So to keep it balanced, why don't I add in the same thing that I subtracted? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to add 4 on the outside of the equation. Now let's simplify that a little bit. This gives me f of x equals negative 4 times x minus 1 squared plus 2. So the reason why I like completing the square is it gives me a little more information than the vertex formula does. First, I can look at my leading coefficient, and since it's negative, it tells me it opens down. This tells me how wide it opens. This tells me where the vertex is. I can still see the vertex is at the point. Remember to change your sign. Keep the other one the same right there. Another way you can do it is use a graphing device where you would just find the minimum and the maximum. Obviously that's not a solution for a test, but it's great for checking answers. And just for the fun of it, I want to introduce one last way, and this is just for fun for the most part. You probably won't typically do this in the tutoring center, but it's just to demonstrate the idea that there's always more than one way to approach a problem. If I take the first derivative, which is a calculus idea, of this function, that would give me minus 8x plus 8. This is saying this is the slope of this guy. It's a formula for slope. And if I set that equal to 0 and solve for x, I would subtract 8 from both sides and divide by 8, meaning x is 1. Then I want to run that back through my function, which would give me the 2 by the time I went through the whole thing. Now obviously you don't want to take that approach if they're in 143. You don't want to introduce calculus ideas, but the point of this is just to kind of help you, just to open your eyes a little bit, just to look at all of these problems and go, how else could I approach this? If something's not making sense, what else can I do to help it make sense to the people coming in?